There we go. Got it. Right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning the final 3 chapters of the entire Yada Chazaka. We are learning Melachim U'Malcham Oiseyim, Rakim 10, 11, and 12. Give me just a second. All right, that took care of that. So let's do this again. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam. We are learning the final 3 Prakim of the entire Yada Chazaka. We are up to Hilchos, Melachim, U'Malcham Oiseyim, Prakim Asiri, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th chapter. The 10th chapter is going to conclude the sugya of B'nai Noach, the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and it's going to focus specifically on levels of the obligation of B'nai Noach in the fulfillment of their mitzvahs and the punishments if they violate their mitzvahs. Perek Asiri has 12 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Ben Noach sheshogag ba'achas mimitzvaysav. If a guy inadvertently violated one of the mitzvahs. Now, in the Torah for Jews, there is a big difference, specifically when it comes to punishments, which is really just a symptom of what's really going on between if someone does something intentionally, knowing God says don't, and I'm doing it, versus if someone does something inadvertently. By a goy, and if a yid does something b'shoigig, I'll give you an example, many times we have to bring a carbon chatos. So there is also a certain level of liability, even for shoigig. By a ben noyach, any mitzvah that he does b'shoigig, pater miklum. That's step number 1. In other words, no carbon, there's no need for any atonement. With the exception, chutz miroitzeach b'shgaga, if he kills inadvertently. Now, not that he's going to be liable, but when a yid kills inadvertently, there's a certain scenario where the Jew has to go to the city of refuge, because if he would be out of that city of refuge, if the goyal hadam, that the Rambam already explained is the relative of the victim, were to avenge by killing this manslaughterer, that goyal hadam will be exempt. And therefore, the Torah provides for the Ritzeach Bishgaga to go to Arei Mikla to be safe. But she'im harogoy goyal hadam einen ergolov. The goyal hadam has no place. This person, the guy that killed B'shoigig, has no place where to run to. There is no concept of a city of refuge in the Torah for Ben Noach. And if the goyal hadam were to kill him, then einen ergolov. Dein leir miklat. In other words, so there's going to be a consequence of him doing something b'shoigig. But other than in that case, okay. If when is he not going to be held liable if he did something without knowledge that what he's doing is wrong, but that has to be better defined. You're going, for example, if a person has a relation with his fellow's wife, but he thought he thought it was his wife. He thought she's not a married woman. So the inadvertency was he didn't know who she is. But if he knew that this is another man's wife, what was his shoygig? The Ben Noach did not know that it's prohibited to have a relation with a married woman. Ela Allah aliba, he thought that such a thing is permitted. Or another example, if a person, a Ben Noach killed, he knew that he's killing, he intended to kill, he didn't know that it's prohibited to kill. The Rambam says that's not called a shoygig. That's called karav lemezit, v'nerag. That's already near purposeful. You should have learned. You should have known. Why? Very important rule. Shigegas Talmud, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, oilazad, and the same concept applies to a non-Jew as well. Okay, that's rule number 1. Halacha beis. Another big topic. If he was coerced to violate one of his commandments. So we have this concept by Eden. that normally if I'm being forced to violate the Torah, being forced means I'm being told if I won't violate it, my life will be taken. So we know the rule that Rambam began with that. Generally, aside of the big three, a person should violate and preserve one's own life. For the three great sins, idolatry, adultery, and murder, a person should die al kiddush Hashem, give up one's life. Says the Rambam that by goyim mutar loy laver, he's allowed to violate. Now mutar, just to know, there's a big topic. Is he allowed to give up his life for God? That's a big discussion. Mashma from the Rambam that he could, but he's not obligated. In other words, the concept of Kiddush Hashem, you have to give up your life at times, is something connected to a Yid. A Goy is not commanded to go al Kiddush Hashem. And the Rambam gives an example. Even if he's being forced to serve Avodah Zarah, but he's being told, if you're not going to worship an idol, you're going to die. Oiveit. Lefi she'ein mitzuvam al Kiddush Hashem. Ula oilam ein onshin mahem. Like cotton, v'lei chedesh, v'lei shoita. Lefi she'einon b'nei mitzvahs. Now, I just want to say the following, that even though the Rambam makes us a big statement that they're never commanded to go al Kiddush Hashem, the example that Rambam gives is from idol worship. There's a big discussion, even b'shita sanambam, what about murder? What happens if one guy tells the other guy, you have to kill, if not, you'll be killed? So even though the Rambam, without specifying murder, makes this blatant statement that a guy is never commanded to go al Kiddush Hashem, there are many who opine that even a guy is not allowed to kill, even if it's going to cost him his life. Even according to the Rambam. And if you remember, Yakir the Sugya and Sanhedrin and in other places, murder is different. When it comes to the other of the three, our sources, from where we learn you have to go al Kiddush Hashem. When it comes to murder, the Gemara says, Sfarahu. My chaza, the duma didach, chazi tvei. In other words, someone is going to die over here. Who are you to determine that your blood is redder than your fellow's blood? So if a life will be taken, life is precious. You don't determine whose life, you don't take the life. It's going to cost you your life. A life is going to be lost anyway. That logic applies to Goyim. Also, Goyim are connected to reason. The concept of Kiddush Hashem it comes from a place that a Jew's neshama is connected to God completely. There's an essential bond. We cannot be disconnected from God. We can't live without that connection. That's something connected to a Jewish neshama. Coming back to murder and Asher Lochein, like when the Germans were claiming that they murdered the Jews, they were told to do so. That was their claim. That was their excuse. If they wouldn't have followed orders, they would have gotten killed. Could be it's true they would have gotten killed. Nevertheless, they're guilty. And even according to the Rambam, and they ain't kind of to continue this. Okay. We just learned that Goyim, like Eden, have this concept of a cotton. In other words, if they don't have das, they're never going to be punished. They're not the name mitzvahs. And when does a Goy become a gadol? The Rambam doesn't write when he's 13 years old, but that's another big topic. The Rambam just says a cotton by a Goy also is not commanded. And this really boils down to, what's the source in the Torah, my friends? Where do we know that bar mitzvah, you become a man by bar mitzvah? So really there's either such a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, or the sources, Shimon and Levi, they're called men, and we know then that Levi, the younger one, was only bar mitzvah on that day when they went to kill Shechem. In other words, if it's learned from halacha l'Moshe Sinai, it's shaykh to say that Goy might have a different age. If it's learned from Shimon and Levi, and that was before Matan Torah, Yeshmarkim Leimer, that it's a universal thing. But the Rambam doesn't say over here what the age is, just a concept. Halacha Gimel. Ben Noach Shin is Gayim. Meaning umal v'taval. Then he changes his mind. It's called buyer's remorse. Now, don't forget, he's not coming from being an idol worshiper. We're speaking about someone who already became a ger toisha. That means he, in front of a beis din, undertook to keep the 7 mitzvahs because God commanded us to keep it. And as we'll still learn in this chapter, there are differences between a goy and a ger toisha. Big. He was a ger toisha. He became a ger tzedek, and he says, "Oh, too much." Right? He wants to go again, like the way it was before. Ain't shomim loy, too late. Ella yik yisrael l'chol davar. And if not, listen to the words of the Rambam, yehadei. He's a big, not Yehorig if he violates Shabbos, b'mezid in front of Adam. Yehorig. Now you have this unique scenario where a minor is going to be taken to the mikvah by the Beis Din. Okay, all this will leave open. So these are big statements. Now let's go weiter. If a katan who's a minor cannot be makabel the mitzvahs, which is what conversion is all about, because it doesn't have das. What happens is you take him to the mikvah, and certain times it's not the way people think always. In certain circumstances, when the minor becomes a halachic, an adult, they ask him, or let me say it like this: even if he doesn't say anything, it means he consents. But if he says, I don't want this, then retroactively, then he can nullify the gear. That's the exception. A minor that was toivel by the Beis Din, and indeed revert back to be the ger toishev. Now, it's not shot that he was a Jew and he went back to a ger toishev. That's megala, but you need gemiras das. You need to be kabbalas mitzvahs. What does it mean? Beis Din is makabel for you. Where do you have such a thing? Yeah, when you're a minor, that's life. When you're a minor, your parents decide what you're doing, where you're eating. But when you become an adult and you say, I don't want this, then there's no gators. Now, the Rambam wants to emphasize, it's not that when this minor becomes an adult, he has to say, I want to be Jewish. Even if he's silent, that means he agrees. For how long? For a moment. And then, like any other convert, shuv enemoicha. Elader ger tzedek. The fikach im ba Yisrael al ktano shit bilo Beis Din. So all of the punishments, kesef ksuvas, iknaso yenes mafata, yakol tachas yad Beis Din, all of the monies that he has to pay, and this are unique fines that are connected to her being Jewish. So since there is a possibility that she will retroactively, or she won't be, or become revealed that she's not Jewish, the money that he has to pay has to go to the Beis Din. Why not to her? Because she might say, I don't want to be a Jewess. And then she will not be a Jewess. So the money stays in Beis Din. And then that she doesn't have a schus, only B'dinei Yisrael, and it turns out she was never a Jewish woman. Amazing. Another din. One of the 7 mitzvahs, B'nei Noach, not to blaspheme. Okay? So if he, God forbid, if he did that, or if he worshipped idols, or he desired, or if he had a relation, al eshes chaveiroi. Guys, just to remember, good mnemonic. What are the 7 Noachite laws? Just to remember, the 3 sins for which a Jew has to give his life: no idolatry, no adultery, no murder, and then Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet. What's Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet? Ever Menachai, Birchas Hashem. Blasphemy, Birchas Hashem is a euphemism. Gezela, Geneva Gezela, and Dalet is dinim, to establish a judicial system to implement those and the other ones that you people that a society accepts upon itself. Okay, so if he did these, this is what happened. Now, when he was a goy, just to make it clear, whenever a goy violates his mitzvahs, we established in this chapter, guys, that there's shogik, he'll be exempt. Mezid, Karav LaMezid will be chayiv misa. Just to know, the misa that a ben noach is chayiv and is always to be decapitated, sayif. By Yidin, you have 4 types of deaths: skilas, reifa, hereg, and chenek. By a goy, there's only hereg or sayif. That's the same thing. Now, if this guy violated, which means that if he would have, he should have been chayiv to be decapitated, and then he converted, he becomes exempt. Wow. And the Bachal, just to know that there's a whole different process for which a Jew is taken to court. The concept of forewarning does not exist by Goyim the way it exists by Yidden, etc., etc. So in other words, once he becomes Jewish, the entire procedure, like a technical thing, the procedure through which he was tried is not a Jewish procedure. Okay. Now, what happens if he killed a Yid, or God forbid, committed adultery with the wife of a Jew, and then he converted? Then he'll be chayiv. And Hargen Oisai, Al Ben Yisrael, for killing a Yid. Chonken Oisai, Alesh Yisrael Shabal. Sharei Nishtana Dinoi. In other words, what we are saying is, is that even though he's going to be put to death, but there was a change, because if he would not have converted, and let's say he had a relation with a woman that's married, a Jewish woman, by goyim, there's only one type of death, which is decapitation. If a Jewish man has a relation, God forbid, with a married Jewish woman, aside of the exceptions, strangulation. So he's going to be given chenek. In other words, the type of death will be as a yid, but he'll be tried. And even by the ben noach, there are exceptions. What's the exceptions? That if a ben noach has a relation with a married Jewish woman, I take it back. Not a hamorasa yisakel. Then okay, halacha from oral tradition we know that aside of the Shava mitzvahs, there are other prohibitions. One of this, that a ben noach is not allowed baharboas behema. He's not allowed to crossbreed animals. He cannot graft trees. That's the only types of shatnez that a goy cannot do. He didn't have many other prohibitions, like we cannot mix wool and linen, we cannot cook meat and milk. Goyim, aside of the Sheva mitzvahs, these two types of mixtures they're not allowed to do. But if they do it, they don't get killed for it. Another rule: va'akum shehika Yisrael. If a guy hits a yid, even afilu chaval by kaishu, he's chayev misa. That means b'dei shamayim. We know that from Moshe. Why did Moshe kill the Mitzri? Because he hit the yid. Nevertheless, he's not going to be put to death in court. Okay. In other words, we have a tradition that only for the violation of the Shava mitzvahs are you put to death in a court. And the courts don't, I take back the word basin, in a court. As we'll see in a moment, where you already learned that if Goyim are qualified to learn these dinim, which they are, if they were to know the dinim of the Shava mitzvahs, really they should set up their own courts and they should be judges. If there's a need, then a yid becomes a judge. I think that's going to be later in this chapter. Now, halacha zay. Hamila, the mitzvah of circumcision, it's Tava Ba'Avram, and only his seed, which means only the Jewish people, as the Rambam explains. And that's the meaning, what it says in Parshas Lech Lecha, Atov Zaracha Acharecha, you and your seed after you, that Dafke comes to exclude Yishmael. Yishmael was the seed of Avram. And I'll tell you more, when God commanded Avram to make a circumcision, God commanded him to circumcise all of his son and his servants. Yishmael was circumcised. That was only to him, not the future generations. And that's the application of the pasuk, Ki beYitzchak yikarach lecha zara. Zera means Yitzchak. Furthermore, if Zera means Yitzchak, then one can think that all of the Romans, all of the Bnei Esav, they're Bnei, that's Yitzchak. Oichet nicht. The Yotze Esav, because Yitzchak told Yaakov, "V'yitin l'chas birchas Avram l'cha u'lazaracha." Zaracha only means Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Machlal shulavad zara shel Avram amachzik b'dasai u'b'darchei yishara. And veheim amichuyavim b'milam. Halacha ches amru chachamim, that there is an exception. The Bnei Keturah, that means after Sarah Imenu passed away, Avraham married Keturah. Rashi says that was Hagar. He remarried her, and he had with her children. So says the sages that they are considered Zarei Shel Avram. No, it's when Avram Avinu had Yitzchak and Yishmael, and God told him the words, B'negei Yitzchak, Ki beYitzchak yikarach lecha zara. That excluded Yishmael because he was there. Since the Bnei Keturah were not there, so they were not there to be excluded. So they're not excluded. But one second. Now that Rambam says an interesting twist. They intermingled with the other Bnei Yishmael. So if you have in that world some that are descendants of Keturah, some that are descendants from Yishmael, and they don't know themselves who is who, so they're all chayiv, because maybe they are Bnei Keturah. You understand? Yischayvu hakol b'mila b'shmini. However, if they won't circumcise themselves, again, the ain neheragin aleha. How amazing is that? Them circumcising themselves by 13, b'chlal is in Yiddish nishke shtoigen nishke floigen. That's their own invention. No, it's Yishmael's circumcision by 13 has nothing to do with future generations. And many people hold that the Bnei Keturah are chayiv, like Jews, when they're 8 days old. The Rambam is basically paskening that all of these Muslims, I'm not going to say the words Muslim, that's a religion, all of the people from that part of the world, if they are maybe Bnei Keturah, which means they are Bnei Yishmael and they got intermingled, they intermarried one with the other, then the chayiv to circumcise themselves when they're 8 days old. But I'm saying, halacha 9. Guys, I want to make something very clear. There are two prohibitions. A Jew is not allowed to teach a goy Torah. The Rambam is not speaking about that Isser. We're speaking to Bnei Noach. A goy is not allowed to learn Torah. And if you learn Torah, it's chayav misa. We just said chayav misa means we have this tradition that a Beis Din or their court only kills them if they violate the Sheva mitzvahs. That's not one of the Sheva mitzvahs. So we're learning about additional prohibitions. Chayav misa means they are liable to death in the hands of heaven. What should they be occupied in? In their Sheva mitzvahs. Lo yasek ela b'Sheva mitzvahs shalom milvad, which happens to be a lot. But not learning about Dinei Torah, learning Hilchos Shabbos, the chayav misa. Now, when a Yid, when a person is coming to convert, that's different. There they have to learn. And they don't even learn everything before the conversion. In times of Chazal, they learned very little. Now they learn a lot more, but that's different because here they're doing it l'shem gerus. If he keeps Shabbos, not only on the 7th day of the week, even if he picks another day of the week, the way the Christians, in their attempt, God forbid, to overturn the Torah, so they keep their rest day as Sunday. For that, if they make it like Shabbos, chayav misa. God created the world for everyone to work. Now, if a person needs to take a break, that's a break in order to work. That's permitted. We're living in a world today, right before Mashiach, people became so delicate. Many people need 4 days off to work 3 days. Okay, if that's what people need. But the concept of Shabbos is not that I'm resting in order to work better. The purpose is to rest. No, only if God commanded you to do so. If not, you're going against the purpose of creation. God created us to work. God told us to keep Shabbos, we have to keep Shabbos. Goyim were not told to keep Shabbos, they're not allowed to keep Shabbos. The Ein Sarach Loimer, if they make any other religious holiday for themselves, the Chayav Misa. And the Rambam adds even something bigger. We're not allowed, as far as a Jew is concerned, to allow any goy in the world to make a religion. Because the word religion, it's a loaded word. There's what God told us. You want to call that religion, then there's only one religion, which is the Jews to keep the 613 and the goyim to keep the 7, plus what we're learning here. That came from God. All else did not come from God. They're not allowed to do that. It's blaspheming. Don't bring God in. You want to make your own say that I decided that it's a good thing to have such a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle to hug a tree or whatever. But don't mix God in here.
Rabbi, in the days of Jesus, did we not allow them to make Christianity?
First of all, it happened over time, and it was a terrible thing, and we did not have the power to stop them. We don't have the power now either to dictate other nations what they should do. But we have a responsibility to teach them what God said, that God told humanity, you're not allowed to make up religions. Period. God communicated to the world through the Jewish people what he expects of the world, what he wants from the world, what the purpose of the world is. And that's it. God never communicated any other things to any other nations. To make mitzvahs. And people can make rituals, not religious rituals, gesundheit. I have a ritual before I go to sleep. I touch my nose, I touch my toe, and I fought gesundheit. But don't make it into a religious, meaning don't mix God into it. Ella, what are the options for humanity? Either become a ger tzedek, which is why we're not a racist group of people. We accept if someone wants to become a ger, no matter where you came from, anyone, yikabel kol mitzvahs, or yamoid b'toirasai. And here it's amazing that Rambam uses the word Torah to the Sheva mitzvahs. It's the word Torah that Rebbe says always. Torah means a guidance. God, it's only fear. God created humanity. God told humanity what he wants from them. And God told it to them. So denying that God told it, forgetting that, and substituting it, that's mamash the end of the world. Lo yosef lo yigra. These are the three things. So before we learned that other than the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, we don't put them to death. What do? Nothing. For these three we do. For learning Torah, for which the Chayiv Misa, for keeping Shabbos even on Sunday, or the way the Muslims keep it on Friday, the Chayiv Misa, or for making up any other religious observance, we are obligated Makanoisa. We're obligated to fight against it. You're Chayiv Misa, but we're not going to put you to death. Now, if they stop for, if stopping meaning if they understand this to be a religious, that God commanded me to take a day off. No, God commanded the Jewish people to rest l'shem, emulating God. God did not command people to take it. God commanded people to work. God understands that we're not machines, that every person needs downtime. That's different, but downtime is not a religious observance. That's the big difference. Halacha Yud. Ben Noach shirotz alasis mitzvah. Now, what happens? A Ben Noach, guys, means a ger toisha. When someone already is doing the Sheva mitzvahs, Yakir, they're not making up on the religion. Goy says, I want to put on tefillin. I don't want to be Jewish. If God gave it to the Jewish people, so we learn. Torah he can't learn. Shabbos he can't keep. Cannot make up new mitzvahs. What about all the other mitzvahs that Rambam holds he could? There's something of value to God. So don't stop them. How great is that? Some of the commentators say that Adva says, and I mentioned tefillin, that tefillin will be an exception. That mezuzah should be an exception. Because whenever you have stam, sifrei, Sefer Torah tefillin mezuzahs, and there's a lot of kedusha there, and from lack of knowledge, there might be a bezoin in the kedusha. He writes more problematic. The Rambam doesn't even write that explicitly, just a concept. And therefore, the imhevi oila mikabelin mimenu, nasan tzedakah mikabelin mimenu. Now we're going to get to tzedakah in a moment, so let's focus on tzedakah. The Yira Ali, now the halacha Yira is about a goy. Ben Noach means someone who undertook to keep the Sheva mitzvahs. Shenoisnin oisel aniya Yisrael. The money that he gives to tzedakah, give it to Yid. Why? It makes sense. Because we are obligated to support the aniyim of ger toishevs. So it's normal. If we support them, and if they are wealthy, so it goes both ways. Ha'akum means someone who did not undertake to keep Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. If he gives tzedakah, and the chanami, we take it from him, not to create animosity, but you should only give it laniya akum, and not laniya Yisrael. And there's a chilul Hashem involved in this, as we learned in the Gemara. To take money from the goyim to support the halacha Yudal. Hayavin Bezin shall Yisrael. Here we go. Lasoi shoiftim laelo hagedim atishav. It's our response. No, it's if God would have given them their Sheva mitzvahs directly, and I heard and I repeated this many times that when we have this medrash and people have songs that God came to all the nations and He asked them whether they want to Torah, and they asked what does it say in the Torah, and they rejected it. God was never going to give them the Torah that we have. God wanted to give the nations of the world their Sheva mitzvahs. That's why in that song of the Medrash, all of the, what does it say? Not to kill, not to serve idolatry. No, it's the Sheva mitzvahs. God, it turned out that they didn't want to get it from God. So God told us, He gave it to us, we have to give it to them. So really, we are obligated to set up the judicial system, to set up judges. In order for the world not to be destroyed. In other words, the Sheva mitzvahs, the content of the Sheva mitzvahs is that the world has to be a tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is a humanity's purpose, not a Jewish purpose. Of course, we can lend hand to that. Our purpose is to bring kedusha in the world. But if they are learned enough and they are able to appoint their own judges, gavaldik mamidin, whatever works. Halacha Yudbei Shnei Akum Shabo lefanecha. Two goyim, they come to a Jewish court. Lodem din Yisrael. Verotzu Shnei Lodem din Torah. First, then the din is done in. Hoy hoechad roitze vechad in roitze ein koifen oisel lodem elo b'dinay. Hoy Yisrael va'aku. Now, im yesh chush liYisrael b'dinehem, so then danon loy b'dinehem v'oimrim loy kach dinechem. If it's going to be advantageous to the Yid for him, for this case to be ruled based on the way we paskin, which are different, b'dineinu danon loy din Torah v'oimrim loy kach dinenu. Obviously, if we have that power, it says that Rambam v'yirah li she'ein oisem kein lager toisha elo lo oilam danon loy b'dinehem. Because that's not fear. Well, it's not fear because this guy is not even keeping the Shabbat mitzvahs b'nei noyach, so we don't have to be fear with him. But if someone is a ger toishav, it's only fear. A ger toishav and a yid, ger toishav says, if it's with me, I want to be ruled by my dinim. V'chein yiroli shrei hagim em ger toishav v'derech eretz u'v'gemilas chasadim mamish like a yid, because we are commanded to support them if they need, as it says a pasuk in Parshas 3a, lager asher b'sharecha titanan v'achol. The sages tell us, Ein koiflim lahem shalom. Ein koiflim, the Rabbi says, that's ba'akum. And v'loy beger toishav. And I'll tell you something more than that. Really, ba'akum, if a guy's worshiping an idol, we should not have to greet him at all. The only reason why we greet him is not to create animosity. So therefore, you can only say shalom once. But shalom, even to doubling, you can even say to a ger toishav. Afilu ha'akum, tzivah chachamam levakir chayleim. And like I said, because of Eva, and Harei Nemar, Toiv Hashem, to whom God is good, to all. To whom does God have compassion? To all of what he did. And the Neman, and it says regarding the Torah that and that means the way that Rambam is applying it is that even if you have an idol worshiper, you only don't say shalom twice, say shalom once. Because if I'm connected to God, which we are, especially through the observance of the Torah, there has to be an expression of the noyam and of the shalom to the whole world, worthy or not worthy. And that concludes the topic of the Bnei Noach. And as the Rebbe explains, the reason why the Rambam writes down in Sefer Yad HaChazaka all of the dinim of the Bnei Noach right prior to the final two chapters, which deal with the redemption, with the final redemption, that's because in human history, when will there be an awakening of Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach right before the coming of Mashiach? And therefore, part of the hachana of bringing Mashiach is to make much, much bigger campaigns to educate the world with the Sheva Mitzvahs. Just to share an idea that came up here in Chabad Sola, not that long, maybe during COVID. Today you have influencers. So the Sheva Mitzvahs, let's say you pay the biggest influencers, get 7 of them, the Goyim, Michael Jordan, all these people, and each one should advertise one of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach and pay them $1 million. But when they do that, you push it, you connect, you inform billions of people. And this is a responsibility that the Jewish people have. The Rebbe always spoke out. Why didn't we find in the past Jewish people being way down, undertaking this responsibility? Because the Goyim would never listen from us what God has what to say. They would find it offensive that we're coming and telling them. They were constantly forcing us to convert. We were happy if they were not killing us, if we're not bowing down to their Avodah Zarah. But now the world is different. Now the world is ready to listen from the Jew what God has what to say, because we are the only ones that really know what God has what to say. And that's part of our achrayis, and that's part of the coming of Mashiach and more. That has to be a hachana for the coming of Mashiach. Now the final 2 chapters is about Mashiach, and also the Rebbe says that I'm going to put it at the end because this is the purpose of all of the creation. And that's very important that when Chazal use the word Olam Haba, so there are many Olam Habas. The Olam Haba, which is connected to the world of the resurrection, which is connected to the world in which God will reward us, that does not belong in Yad HaChazaka, because that's something that God will do for us. Yad HaChazaka is a compilation of the Torah of what I have to do for God. And the ultimate time period in history where we collectively, and me as a Yid, as an individual, I will be able to fulfill my purpose, which is to keep all the mitzvahs, that will be only with the coming of Mashiach. In other words, the coming of Mashiach is all about, finally, us fulfilling the purpose of Dira B'Tachtonim. In other words, the Yemais HaMashiach is not the world of reward. It's very important. That's later. Fakert, it's the ultimate Hayoim La'Soisam is Yemais HaMashiach. The ultimate. Then we'll have a Beis Hamikdash. Then we'll keep all the mitzvahs, which we were never able to keep. And as the Rambam is going to point out, like when it comes to the Arei Mikla, like that detail of separating not the 6 cities, the 3 and the 3, but the 3, 3 and the other 3, we never kept it yet. That's just an example of something that was never done yet. And there has to be a shleimus in Torah mitzvahs. So that's the concept of Geula and Mashiach. Another quick intro, that there are 2 parts of the coming redemption. There is the person Mashiach, and then there is the Messianic era. There's Geula and Mashiach. The Seder of the Rambam is, first he speaks about Mashiach, then he speaks about Geula, because they are linked one with the other. Who will usher in the Geula? The person of Mashiach. So Perek Achadasa for halachas, it's going to be about Mashiach. What he is, why is he coming? How can we identify him when he says, I am here? And then the final Perek is going to be about the Messianic era, the times of Geula. And all of it is very much based on the Rambam's psak, Keshita Shmuel, and that's going to manifest, Yakir, both in this chapter and the next chapter. Shmuel says, Ein Bein, Olam Hazeh and Yemaisa Mashiach, Elo Shibud Malchus. Which means that many people envision, and you have many midrashim that paint a picture that there'll be such types of miracles in the time of Mashiach, connected even with the coming of Mashiach, miraculous, that it's amazing. But the Rambam negates that needs to happen that way. The Rebbe says that Rambam never denies that possibility. We don't close that door. But in theology, in Higoyim, shouldn't be that way. Because the whole purpose of creation is Dira B'Tachtonim. Dira B'Tachtonim means the world, the way we know it, should be a place for God. If the world becomes so miraculous, it's no longer this world. A miraculous world is not the Tachtonim. If it's going to be a different type of world, then we failed in Dira B'Tachtonim. We need for the Beis Hamikdash to be built in the world the way it is. For people, the way we are to serve God. If God is going to make biblical miracles and I'm going to be so inspired by God, it's a different me. That me being a tzaddik is nice, but I need the me to be the tzaddik. The world the way it is. It fits. So dafka, in the beginning at least, there won't be miracles. It's a natural event. And there's going to be a human being, that Rambam says, who's going to get up, and he's going to usher in the era of the redemption. And the Rambam emphasizes again that Mashiach doesn't have to perform miracles, all connected. Mamash, in the Gemara, we're going to speak about it soon. When Ben Koziva said, "Ana Malka Mashiach," some Chachamim tested him out. Is he moirach v'doin? Does he have some miraculous power? And he didn't. And they rejected him. Rabbi Akiva didn't reject him, even though he knew he's not moirach v'doin. Because why would Mashiach have to perform miracles? It's a Mashiach is a king. King means a government. There's going to be a government with the head of the government. We're calling him Melech HaMashiach, and that will be the purpose of the government. So we'll see what Mashiach is going to be doing. Let's begin with Halach Aleph. HaMelech HaMashiach. Asid Lamoid. He's getting up. And the Rambam writes 4 things, and that's Mashiach. Number 1, Lahachzir Malchus David Liyashna. He will bring back, he will renew the kingdom of David. Now, the beauty of this statement that Rebbe says is that there's no chiddush here. Not bring a new era. David HaMelech, he's bringing back, don't think it happened already. He's bringing it back. Number 2, part of that will be, and it won't be in the first moment, as the Rambam already began in the series of Hilchos Malachim, that the purpose of a melech and of a government, Aleph, is security. So the first thing he's going to have to do is, he's going to have to deal with Amalek before the Beis HaMikdash. Because if you have a society in which people are not safe, you can't properly serve God. Safety comes first. No one should ever feel the feeling of, my life is in danger. You can't function. So first of all, Memshol Zedeshain. And that's part of King David HaMelech, who waged battles. That's what he did. He brought safety from within and from without. Number 2, Ubayna Beis HaMikdash. Number 3, this is the Rebbe says, the Seder is Meduyak. He's going to gather all of the Yidden. Doesn't mean that there won't be many Yidden living there. As we know right now, many Yidden are living there. But Kibbutz Golius comes after the building of the temple. And number 4, which means Makrivan Karbana is the first thing that Rambam writes as an example. Unlike people who very, very wrongfully quote the Rambam, a misquote of the Rambam, that sacrificial animal Karbanis, which is the whole Chumash Vayikra, of course is coming back. That's the center of Yiddishkeit. That's the first example. He's giving examples of mitzvahs that we don't keep now. Makriv and karbanos. We're going to make shmitin and yovelis. The chol mitzvahs amor b'Torah. So it's amazing. So this is the definition of Mashiach. So don't think about the face on the person. Mashiach is the one who's going to bring back the Davidic dynasty. He's going to bring a certain amount of real independence. Number 2, he's going to build a temple. Number 3, he's going to gather all the Jews to Israel. And number 4, he's going to see to it that all of Yiddishkeit will finally be practiced again. Boy, in the person, or doesn't, even you can believe in such a thing, but you don't await his arrival. And here the Rambam brings all the sources. There's nothing to talk about. It's filled with Mashiach. All of them Parshas Nitzavim. And even if you're going to be in Atchacha B'Ktzei Hashemayim, Behevi Yacha Hashem, Ve'elu Hadvarim HaMefarashim B'Torah, Heim Koilim Kol Hadvarim Shenemru Al Di'anavim. Furthermore, it says that Rambam, after Parshas Bilam Nemar, and V'Sham Niba B'Shnei Mashiachim. So just to make it clear, using the words of the Rebbe, that Torah itself you can divide into 3 categories. You have Torah, you have Nevuah, and you have mitzvahs. They ain't kanamakim, but yesh bozeh masha ein bozeh. And it was important for the Rambam to find sources and to show that there are sources in all of these 3 levels. So the first one, Torah hi'ida. Now we're quoting Parshas Bilam in the context of Nevuah, that as Nevuah we have, and he didn't only speak about Mashiach, and that this is about Mashiach. But now that we began by saying that Mashiach is not bringing something new, Mashiach is going to be really a completion of David HaMelech. David Malka Mashiach. We had this already. So that's why he already connects that here. Now, Bilam came before David. But Mashiach Rishon Shu David. And what is David? What's the ikar of David? Safety. Shoishiyas Yisrael Meyatzoreim. You look at right now the current affairs, Tafshan Pei, a second before the Geula. What's the biggest issue? I know there's inner issues. That we have enemies that Pasha want to kill us. And all of the balagan right now in Israel, they're coming from those enemies. People just don't see it. People who hate us. So they're figuring out how to attempt to, God forbid, do terrible things to us. They're making all of this confusion in Israel. So they have to be fought against. They have to be called out and they have to be annihilated. That look at what the Rambam says. Not Mashiach Yakir that's going to build the temple. Not Mashiach that's going to keep Yovel. No. The first thing, a government means that he's going to save us from our enemies. And he quotes details. I see it, but not now. Bilam was seeing David. When he says, I perceive it, but not in the near future. That goes on Melech HaMashiach. When he said the words, Darach Koichav Yaakov, a star shall go forth from Yaakov, that goes to David. When he says, V'kom Shevet Mi Yisrael, a staff shall arise from Yisrael, that refers to Melech HaMashiach. When Bilam said the words, when God spoke through Bilam saying the words, Umachatz Pa'asei Moav, that he will crush all of the princes of Moav, that goes to David, which is exactly what he did. And then, V'cheinu Oymen, and how do we know that the princes, that goes to David? Because it says by David, Vayaches Moav, Vayimadetem B'chevel. The ayin shom, the details of the 2 ropes that he had, etc. Then when Bilam says Vikarkar, he will smote all of Bnei Sheis, which is quite amazing. Because don't forget, right, it was Cain, Hevel, Sheis. Right? And Noach is from Sheis. Even though Nama comes from Cain, Hevel was killed. But all of the men, if you're speaking about the paternal line of all humanity, is Bnei Sheis. That he will decimate all Bnei Sheis. That goes on Malach HaMashiach. And that's what it says regarding Mashiach, that he will dominate miyom ad yom, from sea to sea. When it says, Edom Yeresha, Edom will be demolished, said David, as it says, Vaiti Edom lo David lavodim v'goymer, Hoya Yeresha, that goes to Malach HaMashiach, as it says, Ol Mashiach Bar Tzion. So now we have, the Rebbe says, Torah has in it a Mashiach. Nevuah has Mashiach. And now let's go to mitzvahs, because there's something unique about mitzvahs. So as we mentioned above, and God commands us, and Bachal people ask a question, people who don't follow the Rambam's rule, who insist that it has to be miraculous, which takes away the whole deal of Tachtonim. But they have a kasha. How can it be that when Mashiach is going to come, we're going to have 9 Ari Miklot? If Mashiach will be miraculous, people won't even die then. No one will die. No one will die. You don't need any. So the answer, no, the Ari Miklot will be for all the murders that happen in Golus. Could be. But no, not according to the Rambam. According to the Rambam, after Mashiach will come, there's still going to be a manslaughtering. There's still going to be a Yetzer Hara. The Shechit of the Yetzer Hara will be later. We're going to have a Yetzer Hara. Elamah. We're going to make the right choices. The way the Alter Rebbe says, we will finally become Beinanim. That's the purpose. And the Rambam says regarding this 3 extra cities, means a total of 9 cities, it never happened. I want to make the Listam Lahoyer. Chazal say regarding the Tzadid Umayra, Machloikis, Loihoya, Veloihia, and Chasidus explains it doesn't have to be that it manifests, but that's Alpi Chasidus, Alpi Nigla. The Torah says something, it has to be. Loitziva, V'yasafta Lacha. And I'll tell you more than that. Then Tzadid Umayra is if something were to happen. Here also, God is saying that if they'll have more, must mean it's going to happen. When God says if, it's happening. Now that our sources, like we said, Torah, Nevuah, Mitzvahs. Aval b'divrei hanavim ein hadavar tzarich raya. Shekol hasfarim meleim b'davar zeh. So it's amazing. So what do we have? We have the definition of Mashiach. These 4 points, guys. Remember this. Chayzrin Malchus David lemamshalas harshaino. Binyan Beis Hamikdash. Kibbutz Golius. And I'll tell you why the Rambam writes the 4th. All the mitzvahs, because, for example, Yovel, the Rambam Paskin, Kol Yeshvei Oleh. So in order to keep Yovel, you have to have the kibbutz golius of all the Yidden living there. That's Mashiach. The sources he just brought. Now let's focus on the person. Halacha Gimel. V'al yal al datcha. Shamelech HaMashiach tzarech lasos oisos u'moivsim. These are very powerful rules. People should understand what the Rambam is saying. The Rambam is saying, don't even allow yourself to think that way. It's asur for a person. Al yal datcha. Now, the Rambam also writes, not that he won't, Yakir. Al yal that he has to. Mashiach will have miraculous powers. The Rambam is not saying it can be. But don't think it's sin to think that he has to. That's not Mashiach. That's why by us, all of the big, like the Rebbe was the greatest tzaddik nister. The Rebbe was the greatest tzaddik nister. The Rebbe didn't show that he's a tzaddik. The Rebbe showed that he's a perfect Beinani. Even the miracles that the Rebbe made, Mamish was always check your tefillin, do that mitzvah. Doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to make oisus u'moivsim. He doesn't have to be mechadosh devarim ba'olam or mechayim eitzim mechayim devarim elu. And Yehu thought that way. The Christians think that way. They gave this image that Mashiach will be a miracle worker. It's asur to think that he has to be a miracle. Could he be? Could be. Sharei Rabbi Akiva chacham gadol chacham mishnayim. And he was the one that was noise Caleb of Ben Koziva HaMelech. And if you learn the Gemara, Ben Koziva HaMelech was tested by the Chachamim. Some of them, the minority opinion, some of them felt he's not moirech v'doin. That means that we're going to learn soon in the next chapter that one of the functions that will have to happen at that time is that through Ruach HaKodesh, we're going to have to establish who's a Kohen, who's a Levi, who's Meyuchas.
But even for those
of course, because they held the Shmuel. Not everyone agrees with Shmuel. They held that Yemaisa Mashiach is already the time of the reward, and it's already going to be a miraculous time. And Rabbi Akiva said that he's Melech HaMashiach, and that was the great majority. Chol doesn't mean every single one. The majority that he's Melech HaMashiach. What happened at the end? He got killed, and he sinned. Rabbi Lozer Hamadoi was in Kanamak. But until then, the point is that when he came, so it says that the main thing is, guys, the moment Mashiach has to start performing miracles, that's the beginning of the end. Because in other words, it's not about making new things. The ikir is Yiddishkeit is not about new things. The Chiddush came to us when God gave us the Torah in Sinai. And even then, it wasn't a chiddush. The Torah was kadma lo'olam. It's not about new. The Rambam is really referring to Christianity because what they made up a false Mashiach, and part of their theology is is that there's a new covenant. That's the problem. The ein moisifan aleim v'lo goyden mehen. Now, halacha dalid. This is a halacha regarding what should we do if someone says they're Mashiach. How would we know? But I'm saying this. Im yamin melech mebeis David. And hoige batoira. Look at the qualities that we have to see in him. Hoige batoira. I mean, his life, haravanya. V'oisig b'mitzvahs like David. David. Kifi toira shebechsav v'shebal peh. The Yachoiv called Yisrael Leilach Ba, and he's going to Yachoiv. Today, Yachoiv is through inspiration, but it has to work. And Ulachazik Bitka, and V'yalachim Milchamas Hashem. Now, the Rambam just taught us, I think it was Pedig Revi, Stam to know, Milchamas Hashem means that he's going to annihilate the three words, Shivas Hamamim, that doesn't exist, Amalek, if will identify, and all defensive wars. In other words, the first thing is, prior to anything, is that this person brought safety to the Jewish nation. Now, Beruchnius, there's many Milchamas Hashem, but we're learning the Rambam. And the Rambam defined what that means. It means when we'll finally have someone in power in the Holy Land that will get rid of our enemies. Then, Becheskas Moshiach. Now, Im Hasav Itzliach, Ubal Memigdash B'Mekaymai, Viki Beitz Nitchei Yisrael, then Mashiach Bavadai. That's how we will know. What's going to happen at that point? And that's again behemshich to the halachas of Sheva Mitzvahs, because his responsibility won't only be, it will begin to give us the opportunity to keep all of the mitzvahs. God wants for all of the human beings to keep the Sheva Mitzvahs. He'll see to that as well. That's the meaning that we'll all serve Hashem biyachad. Shenemer ki oz epech el amim sofa berura likrei kulam b'shem Hashem lo avdei shechem echad. Now, the im lo yitzliach at koi, there's going to be people that will attempt to do this. He might not succeed, or if on the way he'll get killed. Biyodua she'eino yizeh shevtich olav atoyru. But it doesn't mean that he's a bad person. El v'hareu k'chol malchei beis David Hashem v'kshem shemeis. Why will God allow for there to be a time that people get up and they declare that they're Mashiach and they start to succeed, Yakid? You know, the downer, and then at some point they fail. Why would God even allow that to happen? To test us to see if we'll still believe that it's going to happen. As it says, in other words, some of the wise men will stumble. Litzraif bahem. God will try them. God will be mevarer them. Ad eis kates. Because it has to happen. And it's going to happen. Not to give up hope. Now that is regarding Jewish kings that got up and failed. That doesn't mean they're bad. It means that God was testing us. But now what about the Goyim that killed us? Beginning with Yoshke. Now this was censored out, and now, so far, there's no censor yet. Mashiach has to come today, and there'll never be a censor on Yidden. Af Yeshua HaNotzri, Jesus, Shedima Sheyia Mashiach, that he imagined that he'll be the Mashiach, and he was killed in Beis Din. We're gonna. HaNotzri means he was formed like any other human being. Maybe that's the word of Noitzer, and where he came from. It's something that he's not conceived by God. The Rambam says it's not even a chiddush. When Daniel says that ubnei paritze, paritze means vulgar, that there'll be vulgar people from Jews, that they will exalt themselves in an attempt to fulfill their vision, they will stumble. Who is the vulgar? Yoshke, Handrik. And why is it called the Mirshal? Because Mirshal Gadol Mizeh. The first function of Mashiach, the first, not at the end, he's going to redeem the Yidden. Like we mentioned, the first thing is, the first sign of Mashiach is what's happening now. You see this? That Jews are getting killed everywhere, especially in the Holy Land. That's because we don't have Mashiach. He's going to save them. He's going to gather the Yidden. He's therefore going to finally give us the ability and inspiration to keep all the mitzvahs. Yoshke did everything the opposite. Vizeh, Gadam la'abed Yisrael b'cherev. He is the greatest cause for Jewish blood to be spilled. He was the cause to ulafazer she'eirasam ulahashpilam. We were scattered because of the Yashka. We were made lowly because of him. He attempted to exchange the Torah and to trick and to fool and to lie to the majority of the world, getting them to serve a getchke aside of God. Christianity is idol worship. I don't know. No, so now the kashi, that's not a nisayin. The Rambam says you can't say this is a nisayin. And indeed, we don't understand. Because the Rebbe always used to use this when it comes to suffering. It's not a punishment. No, we don't deserve a punishment of the Holocaust. We never sinned in 1 billion years to get that as a punishment. So we don't understand. The Rambam is saying that we see some benefit. We're not explaining it, but there is what's the benefit? And the Rambam throws into the same pot, Yishmaeli, Sha'amad Achrav. What they did was what God did through them. Now, a lot of it we don't understand, and we were the ones that got hurt from it. What happened was, it's part of the redemption. It's part of the rectification of the world. Ultimately, everyone is going to serve God biyachad. And what they did is a step towards that. As it says, how is that a step towards it? Explains the Rambam Ketzad. The world is filled with the words of Mashiach. The world is familiar with the words of the Bible. The world is filled with mitzvahs. Right? You go to every hotel, motel, you open up the drawer, and you have their falsification, but it says the word Bible. So at least there's an upside. And the words of the Torah, the way they perverted it, but there is something. Or even Be'im Rechoikim are in far distant in Australia, in the Hawaii Islands, Uba'amim Rabim that are utterly lave. And when they read it, they begin to debate. Some people say, yeah, mitzvahs elu emes. Are you? That's one of the messages of Christianity, but they're batul b'zman hazeh. God changed his mind. Other people say, nah, it never meant it. Shabbos doesn't mean to keep Shabbos. It means to have a peace, to have a family day, not to keep the lamates malachas. And they're not kipshutam. People are confused, but they heard the word. Ukfar ba Mashiach v'gilin estayim. Ukfar ba Mashiach. Never used to always speak this way. Not that he's going to. He already came. And he's revealing. Ukshiyamad HaMelech HaMashiach be'emes. V'yatzliach v'yonam v'yinaseh miyad heim kulam choizrim v'yoidim. Shesheker nachalu avoiseihem. That they were given a Yerusha of Sheker. And their Nevi'im and their parents caused them to make a mistake. So now that we defined what Mashiach is, who Mashiach is, how will we know that that person is Mashiach? Again, if a Mashiach has to perform miracles, then any miracle worker can claim it has nothing to do with that. Now that we're going to go from Mashiach to Geula. And now we're going to speak about the Messianic era. And this final chapter has 5 halachas. Yemais HaMashiach. And just like the Rambam wrote, it's that it's also halacha. It's prohibited for a person to think that Mashiach must perform miracles. The Rambam is paskening, don't think, it's amazing, it's not, don't think that the Messianic era is a miraculous era. That's the hepech, the whole concept. Messianic era is dira b'tachtonim, that the world, the way we know it, our world will invite God in, not a new world. Something will change. People won't die. Now, by the way, even Tchias HaMesim, even at this, if it becomes natural, perfect. That's the ultimate kavanah. It's part of the nature. It's the unknown. Yeah, it's definitely going to be scary. Oh, yeah, davar chidush b'mana. By the way, we believe in Tchias HaMesim. It's the Ikrei Hadas. Doesn't have to be in Maisa Mashiach unless it become natural. You know, it's for the Rambam. Mashiach is net. Mashiach is hayoim lasoisam. That's the nekuda. Not machar lekabel schon. O yeh davar chidush b'maisa bereishis. Elo oilam kimin oyanoi. And it says in Yeshayahu V'gar ze'evim keves. Yeah, a wolf will dwell with a lamb. You find me a wolf that dwells with the lamb. Or v'namadim gedi yirbas. A leopard will lie down with the young goat. It says that Rambam Moshe v'chida. It's a parable. It's a metaphor. Inyan hadavar, that Yidden will finally, because of the success of Mashiach's government, they're going to sit lovetach im rishei akum. The Rambam is not even saying that they're going to be the shoyim, but they're going to respect us. That they are like a ze'ev, like a nomer. Shenemer, as it says, ze'ev aravos yishadadeim. Nomer shoyket aloreim. Clearly, you see that there are allusions to nations, to those type of chayas rois. And more than that, like we mentioned, the yachsaru kulam lodasa emes. In other words, Mashiach begins with the Jewish people, but his teaching, his spreading of the will of God is for the whole world. And therefore, they, from Sheva Mitzvahs, they're not going to steal. Lo yigozlu v'lo yashchis. Elo yechlu davar hamuter v'nachas im Yisrael. And that's another meaning of the pasuk. V'arya kabaker yoichal teven. The Rambam writes clearly, in the days of Mashiach, Yevoda lakoil. No, the Rambam is saying it's parables. Now, for what is which verse a parable? That we don't know. When Mashiach will come, we'll find out not what is literal, what's not. It's parables. Any verse that alludes to a miracle is not literal. That's not Yemois Mashiach, that's later. What will it mean? We'll find out. Right, what illusions do they contain? Halacha beis amru chachamim ein bein ha'olam hazeh liyimais haMashiach ella shibud malchus bilvad. Like eino ella bilvad. Now we're subjugated. We're subjugated to other nations. We're not independent now. That's the tzara. We'll become free people. Free people meaning we're going to be subjugated to God Almighty. That's connected. When we're subjugated to God, then we'll be free. Then the Rambam says, even though the Rambam just wrote before that we'll find out what that watch of it. Tchilas Yemaisa Mashiach, Tia Melchemes Gog uMagog. Gog uMagog is a war, is a physical war, the Pashtus, where all of the nations of the world, all of them, will physically bring their troops specifically to fight against the Jewish dominion over Yerushalayim and HaKodesh. And v'koy the Melchames Gog uMagog Yamoid Navi. And what's the purpose of this prophet? Liyasher liyisrael lahachan libam, to prepare us, to inspire us. And that's the meaning of the pasuk. Hine anochi shalech lachem es Eliyah. I know many people read Eliyahu. Actually, there's a question whether this is Elijah the prophet. Let's go Eliyah Hanavi. And that Eliyah will prepare us, will inspire us to fulfill our purpose, which is to keep all the mitzvahs. And you should know that this prophet Eliyah ain't above. The main purpose why this Eliyah is coming is Elo Losum Shalom Bo'olam Shenemar V'Heshiv Leiv Avei Salbanim. Now look at the words here. It's very important. People get confused over here. I'm just reading the Pshat and the Rambam. In other words, like this. After the Rambam writes like this, that he thinks, without certainty, right here only, that in the beginning of Yemais HaMashiach, before the world of Gog and Magog, there's going to be Eliyah. Then the Rambam writes that prior to Bias HaMashiach, that means before the Yemais HaMashiach, we're going to have Eliyahu. Because and more than that, so sometimes you see it from the views, and sometimes, my friends, the Chachamim, our Chachamim, they decipher. It's not that we have it from the Nevi'im; it was kept hidden. Not do we have it through Chachamim; they don't have a Kabbalah. The Gamma Chachamim ein lahem Kabbalah v'dvarim elu. Elamai, how do they do it? They looked at Psukim and they tried to make a certain understanding. Elo lefi hechra Psukim. And since it's not absolute, if we would have a Kabbalah, we would know. We don't know. And the Rambam says it doesn't bother us. And more than that, the Rambam's purpose of the Sefer is to paskin. The Rambam says, I will not paskin in these matters. Because it's not important. What's important to paskin is what I have to do to God. That's Torah. What I have to do. What God has to do is not part of Torah. That's why the Rambam writes, I'll give you an example. What did we learn in the last chapter? That we will build a temple. Of course, because building of the Beis HaMikdash we mentioned is a mitzvah. The Rambam Paskins in the beginning of Beis HaBchira, mitzvah sasei v'asoli mikdash roshachanti v'chein tasu, the Rambam says is a mitzvah. Don't tell God what he should do. That's not Judaism. Judaism is God telling me what I should do. Mitzvahs is what God tells me to do. Imagine, I'll tell God, you know what? You keep Shabbos. No, that's not Yiddish guy. You keep kosher. No. God is commanding. We have to build a temple. What God will do, when he'll bring which prophet when, that's God's business. But I'll call upon him, ain't sidur havois devarim elu. The order. They're not a ikir badas. And therefore, since it's not a ikir badas, you know how you show it's not a ikir badas? V'lo oilam lo yisasek adam divrei ha'agodos. V'lo yarech v'medrashes so amurim binyanim elu chayetzabem. People that spend all their time learning the agodos about what God will do for us, don't do that. It's the biggest distraction. A couple and couple therapy, what do they focus on? Each one is telling the therapist what the other has to do. They'll never get better. I'm there to figure out what I can do, not what the other should do. $1,000 God Almighty. So all of these agodas, of course God will do. Beautiful. But the pikach, what will God do? When will God do? No. What will I do? What do I need to do? Because people can argue, no, it's going to make me be in love. No, it's not going to give me yira. That's fake. It's not going to do that. And another detail, a person is not allowed to determine when Mashiach will come. Truth be told, that the biggest Chachmei Yisrael, including the Rambam, they gave a year. The Rebbe explains they all gave a year. First of all, they had a tradition. They didn't make it up. It wasn't their lifetime. It was a year. In other words, they lived since the Rambam writes in the beginning of the 11th chapter. You have to be mechakel l'biyasai. It means we have to live a life in which we know where in my lifetime it's happened. And kol yoim today. So making a ketz today doesn't matter. Mashiach is coming today. Mashiach is coming today. That's not called making a ketz. Talking about the ketz of Mashiach.
Yeah.
No. Having a ketz from Mashiach, even though the fact is that big Chachamim did it, so you have to answer why they did it. The Rambam is passing that we are not allowed to calculate the point of times. Ooh, Tavshin Pei Gimel, ooh, this. And people heard this on Tavshin Pei Beis, and they heard this on Tavshin Pei Aleph, and the Tavshin Pei, what does it do? Not only does it not have a Yira, that now, stop delaying Mashiach. When people get up and Chaf Tes Elul and they explain why the number of next year means Mashiach, that's Asur. Because what are they saying? Not today, tomorrow. That's the problem. Not today. The Rebbe says he's late. What cheshboinus? If Mashiach comes now, he came late. Mamish. Not he came late. Overdue. That's the position of a Yid. Nekuda. And Amru Chachamim, Tipach Rucham Shulachashvei Kitzim. Not even to say this in English. A curse. Because they demoralize people. Narvas, Yechake. Wait. V'yamin. B'chlal Adavar. K'moshe b'yarno. B'chlal Adavar means there are certain images of what will happen that we don't know. Yeah. Because we learned what Shalom means. What did we learn in chapter? Also, we just learned this. Shalom means all of the peaceful proposals. Means that you have to be lamas, va'avaducha, and that's peace. Because it's not about who's on top. It's about God being on top. That's the emes. Halachi Gimel says the Rambam b'yimei hamelach haMashiach kishetis yashev mamlachtoi. The iskaptu elav kol Yisrael, and we learned this in the previous chapter. It's a process. Mashiach is a process. If it would be a miracle, it can be like that. It's a process. So when he's going to get more established, when all of the Yidden are going to come back to the Holy Land, one of the things that will have to happen is yisyachasu kulam al piv beruach hakodesh etunu acholav. Now, it's amazing that Rebbe points this out. Rama wrote in the previous chapter that Mashiach, al yal al das, he has to perform miracles. First of all, the Rambam is not speaking about miracles, but it's clear from the Rambam that even the base, when Mashiach will come on the scene, like Bar Koziva, he never had Ruach HaKodesh, he never claimed to have Ruach HaKodesh. At some point, he will be imbued then with Ruach HaKodesh. And what will that be for? So the Rambam wants to paskin over here, Yichus. Who is a kohen that's allowed to be a meyuchas? After all these years of Golus, we don't know that. We need the Ruach HaKodesh. Rambam is going to prove that we are allowed to use the Ruach HaKodesh because many times we say, Torah la Bashamayim. Yeah, at that point. Now he's saying at some point, Mashiach's Ruach HaKodesh will, that's the Meirach V'don. Later, the Rambam says. He'll have to, and he'll know that the Ruach HaKodesh. Sheneman, as it says, V'yashav, that Mashiach, mitzaref u'metayim. Meaning, who will he focus on first? B'nai Levi. Guys, you know who B'nai Levi is? Kohanim and Leviim. That's the meaning of it. Because they, not only do we have to know which tribe they come from, we have to know more. We have to know whether they're not halalim. There we have to know the emes. If not, they're not allowed to do that void. That's a mitzvah. So he's going to be megala, that which no one knows. We're going to see in a moment that we will use his Ruach HaKodesh to determine, am I from the tribe of Yehuda? Am I from which other tribe? But he's not going to give more information than just what tribe. Okay, by all the other Yidden, even if a person is a mamzer, no one knew about it. If no one knew about it, he's not going to be megala. And there's a halacha. Once Yidden are intermingled, it stays that way. But for B'nai Levi, he has to say the emes. B'nai Levi, mitayit chila v'oimer, zeh meyuchas koim meyuchas, zeh meyuchas Levi. Because guys, we need that. And this is how do we know that you can use Ruach HaKodesh? You can pray to Allah Hashemayim. So he's quoting a pasuk from Nehemiah. Nehemiah is called the Tirshasa. We learned this in the Gemara. Remember that Tirshasa? Tirshasa means a governor. Where was that? Tirshasa is Nehemiah. That we don't know who's miyuchas. And he said already then, it's before the times of the second temple, we have to wait until the kohen comes with the Urim V'Tumim. So what do we see from him? That you can use the Urim V'Tumim to determine a halachic status of a Yid. We're allowed to do that. And Bachlal, there's a sefer called Shailas and Trubas Min HaShamayim. Torah la Bashamayim. One of the simple nigladik approaches is, if there is a machloikas in between people in a halacha, like we had in the Tanu Shalach Noi, then the Ruach HaKodesh cannot determine. Torah la Bashamayim. And Natzchuni Bana Natzchuni. But if we Pasha don't know, we don't know. Not a machlikas. No one knows who's the Kohen Meyuchas. We don't know how to know after all these years of Golos. Now we need to have God to tell us the emes, to be Megala the emes. And that's going to happen through the Ruach HaKodesh and Mashiach at that time. Yes. Miyachasin hamuchzakim umaydim hameyuchas. Now on the step number 2, not only will he determine which Kohen and Levi are Meyuchasim, he will also let know me, you, me, which tribe are we from? But by Yossi doesn't have to say whether we are of pure lineage. That means if there's a taint, halacha taint in the lineage, he doesn't have to be megalit. Levium, yeah, but Yisraelim only to the Shvatim. Shemadiel, Shezem, Yeshevet Pliny, Shezem, Yeshevet Pliny, Aval Einoi Oimer, Al Shehein Bechaskas Kashrus, on a Yid that's already assumed to be kosher. This is a mamzer, this is a evet, this is a mamzer. Why will he not reveal it? Because he doesn't have to. Because the din is shemishpacha shenitma'a, a family that was intermingled, nitma'a, and it's like it became kasher. Now says the halacha dal. Whether you're chacham, whether you're navi, the taiva, the yearning we saw by the Rebbe to Yemaisa Mashiach was loy kedei sheyishlatu al kol ha'olam. V'loy kedei sheyirdu to dominate ba'akum. V'loy kedei sheyenasu oisam ha'amim. V'loy kedei lechol v'lishtois v'lismaya. Ella kedei sheyepunuyim. We should be free in order to be able to learn Torah and to really get the chachma of the Torah. Chachma is the bittul, the godliness of the Torah. People have the Torah now. We're lacking the panim. We have the achar. We're going to get the panim then. No one will disturb us. Now, what's the point of all that? What's the point of keeping mitzvahs? For later. That's something else. No, this Kadeshi is called as the Rambam spoke in Al Chashub. Making it mamish clear. The Yemaisa Mashiach is the ultimate Hayim Lasois. And the final halacha of the entire Yad HaChazak. And they're saying a big mazel tov to all of the people that are making the siyum, but especially those who are learning it as the takon of our Rebbe. And Hashem should help us that we should say in now, not in then. But then in that time, what will happen? Lo yeh sham rav. There won't be famine. There won't be war. There won't be milchama. There won't be kina. There will not be envy. V'lo tachlos. There won't be competition. Now, the Rebbe says, hold on, not to have war can happen. I get it. Not to have hunger, we see can happen. Not to have envy, but not to have competition. How is it shaykh not to have competition? It's like a human. Not competition is like changing nature. Hold on. First of all, holy competition is good. Ki nasaf from Tarba Chacham. The Rambam is emphasizing there won't be competition and gashmistic things. Not unless when you have shahatoiva tia mushpas harbe. Guys, if you would have in your bank account $10 billion, so to wissen sein, you're not going to feel competition. We're going to come to a place for chol hamadanim mitzuim mamish ka'afar. Just like dust is freely available. Now, no one has. That's the word. In other words, we're going to come to a very good, very good. Competition is for something of value. That's the word. That humanity and me as a yid will come to a place where we'll finally chap. You know what is of value? Torah and mitzvahs. That's what we're going to want. Kol olam means not only the Yidden, even lahavdol the goyim, the whole world. Ladas es Hashem bilvad. That's the ultimate. Now, olafikach yu Yisrael chachomim gedolim. Not only will they know the nigla part of the Torah, but the yoidim dvarim asasumim. They'll know the mystical part of the previous Torah. And again, what's the word of the Alter Rebbe? There's knowing on a higher level, but the ultimate dira b'tachtonim is taking the most sublime godliness, which is l'mayla mitam v'das, and bringing it down into Chabad. And chachma bina, and not only chachma bina, das, as the Alter Rebbe explains. V'yasigu das boinam v'chapet kifikoyecha adam. So there'll be the ultimate das b'das, the ultimate connection. Shenemer, as it says, Ki mo lo ha'aretz deyas Hashem, kamayim layom mechasim. And here we say that nishpamu hilchos melachim v'hachibar kuloi. And as the Rambam always does, klal, kratu klal, he makes a recap that now we concluded together the 14th Sefer, which is a Sefer of Shoftim, and we covered hilchos of Chamesh, uparak of Achad u'Shmainim, hilchos Sanhedrin, Shisha v'Esrim parakim, hilchos Eidush, Shnaim v'Esrim parakim, hilchos Mamrim, Shiva parakim, hilchos Evel, Arbasa parakim, and the final hilchos Malachim, Shnei Masa parakim, and the Rambam concludes by saying, Baruch Sha'amar, that blessed is he that through his word, v'hoya ha'olam, and that's b'chlaloi, b'pratoi, and that's the emes. In other words, the ultimate that God created through words. What words? You have the Aseret, you have the 10 sayings. Then you have the Aseret Hadibris. And our purpose is to bring the Aseret Hadibris in the Asara Mamoris. So the Baruch Sha'amar V'hoya Ha'olam began with the lower level of speech. And when we as a people, and me as a Yachid, when we learn Torah and keep mitzvahs, B'shleimus, that's the ultimate dita. We bring down the godliness into the world. In the Baruch Sha'amar, we have the Diburim of the Torah. And that will be the Kavanah that we're going to fulfill in the Messianic era. May that happen now. Amen. And a big mazel tov to all.
What are we doing tomorrow?
Tomorrow, Kevan, we have to go through all of the 365 negative